Hey everybody, I'm Tracy Wittenkeller, founder of T-Works and editor of DNN Magazine. And since this is the first issue, I thought it appropriate to ask Shaun Walker, the original creator of the .NET Nuke open source project, co-founder and CTO of DNN Corp, to come by and talk about DNN past, present, and future. And of course, Shaun graciously accepted my invite. So Shaun, welcome, and thanks for being here.
Hi, Tracy. I'm really happy to be here. Happy to provide any information I can about the DNN project.
Well, great. So let's start off with a little history. I think a lot of people want to know how all this got started, and so could you give us a brief history about iBuySpy Portal and how that and eventually .NET came to be?
Sure. Yeah. So .NET Nuke has been around for over 10 years now, and I think a lot of people don't recognize that, especially people that are new to the community. But originally it started as a project that I was working on personally. Microsoft had released some new technology called the .NET platform back in 2000, 2001. I was a software developer, architect at the time, and I knew that that new technology was going to be something that I was going to have to come up to speed on. And the way I prefer to learn about technology is really hands-on, and so Microsoft had released an open source reference application at that time called the iBuySpy Portal. I downloaded that application, and I sort of had something in mind when I created my new application, and that was amateur sports. I felt that there was a need for an application that would allow amateur sports teams to manage their own team sites, and so started building some capabilities around that. I got pretty far into that project and then realized that I wasn't going to be able to commercialize it or do anything significant with it, and so I thought, what better than to share it with the community? Because I'd been active in the discussion forums on the ASP.NET website, the Microsoft site, and there was a lot of people contributing a lot of conversation and great ideas, and I thought, why not share this application back? So what I did is I removed some of the sports-specific functionality from it, and the remainder of it was all general content management type of functionality you would use to build websites, and I released that as an open source application. I called that the iBuySpy Workshop initially, sort of to pay homage to the original iBuySpy portal, and then ultimately within about 3 months that was rebranded to .NET Nuke.
Wow, awesome. So, successful marketers will tell you that you should start with an end goal in mind and then figure out how you're going to get there. When your journey began, did you have end goals in mind in terms of like a business or anything else?
Absolutely not. No, the end goal of the original project was really just to educate myself on the .NET platform. There really wasn't much of an end goal beyond that. So over the years, the end goal has changed continuously. When I initially released the open source application, I didn't know how much interest there would be. Immediately there was a lot of interest, and so then I had to adjust my sort of expectations around that. There was a lot of people getting involved. Then I had to expand and invite a core team of developers to get involved in the project. Eventually it became commercial, and that brings us up to where we are today. But yeah, certainly there wasn't this long-term end goal in mind. I wasn't expecting that .NET Nuke was going to be one of the leading open source content management systems in the world.
Wow, that's crazy, isn't it? Wow, from your humble
Very
beginnings.
crazy.
Yeah. So listen, DNN hit its peak, it appears, like about 2005, 2007. And if I pull up .NET Nuke in Google Trends now, it looks like interest in .NET Nuke has declined since its peak. Should vendors like us and others in the DNN community be concerned about maybe the interest in DNN waning?
I don't think so, but so you're correct that if you look at the trends, similarly if you look at Windows Server trends in general, you'll see that that DNN has followed sort of a similar trend line. So the years from 2005 to 2008, we probably had our highest level of downloads during those years, and there was sort of the highest level of interest in the product. But even though the Google Trend interest has declined, the general interest in content management has increased over the years more and more because people need highly functional software to manage their websites. And so even if interest in DNN has declined, there is still significant enough interest that, there's a large group of people in the world today that need the type of functionality that we offer. And there still is a significant demand for the DNN software and other types of content management systems as well.
Right. I agree. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there is still a significant demand, and it's a good opportunity for users, vendors, whoever wants to get involved in the DNN ecosystem, because the number of downloads and the number of installations of the product still remain very strong. We are still the leading open source content management system that is solely focused on the .NET platform.
Right. Now is actually a good lead into my next question. Do you have numbers on how many downloads, current downloads in the last, let's say, 12 months or recent for .NET Nuke, and how many websites are out there being built on .NET Nuke now, running .NET Nuke?
Right. So the download numbers are all public knowledge because we host our downloads on Codeplex, which is the Microsoft open source site. And so I believe over the last 12 months there's been over 1 million downloads. I think it's been pretty consistent. It's generally over 1 million a year in terms of downloads of the core platform. In terms of installations, we can sort of roughly guesstimate based on crawling websites. There's a number of sites out there that actually look at the number of different types of applications that are installed on the web today, and we can estimate that there's anywhere from 9,000 to 10,000 new DNN sites that go live every month. So let's say about 100,000 new websites that go live on DNN every year.
Wow, that's great. That's great. And there's been some recent changes, obviously, in the brand. So what's behind? Yep. Can you talk about what's behind the recent branding changes and your new Evoke product offerings?
Sure. So with a product that's been around for 10 years under the same brand name, it starts to feel a little bit dated. It needed some updating. The .NET Nuke name itself has not always been a very friendly name, especially when it comes to business. Initially, when new people hear it, they have sort of a reaction which isn't always positive. They don't really think it sounds like a professional product that they would use to build a website. The Nuke name in particular, or the Nuke aspect of the name, has caused a lot of grief over time in different areas because Nuke is not deemed to be a very positive word in a lot of people's minds. And then we also wanted to not be so strongly tied to the .NET platform. .NET has also been around for 10 years, and there's the chance that Microsoft might decide to come out with a new branding initiative as well at some point. And then we wouldn't want to be in a reactive place, right, where we would have to react to Microsoft changing them because at that point .NET Nuke would be perceived to be legacy. Right. And we want to be always perceived to be modern, cutting-edge technology. And we've tried to ensure that over the years that we've always been able to achieve that, but the brand was holding us back. And so it seemed like a natural place for us to go. The community has always referred to the product as being DNN rather than .NET Nuke. And so we thought that was a better brand for us going forward. And so choosing a new brand name of DNN was important, and then secondarily also updating all of the creative aspects of it. So our logo itself had also become somewhat dated. It really hadn't changed since 2005. And so after 7 or 8 years, it's time for a change. And we worked with a consulting company from the Bay Area to come up with a whole new brand. And I'm really happy with sort of how that all came together. And it really sort of infused a whole lot of new excitement into the ecosystem around that brand.
Yeah, it definitely
at the same time,
definitely looks much more fun and inviting now, let's say.
Yeah, it's got some more interesting colors. Yeah. The D itself, that's part of the new brand, is intended to be sort of a fusion of commerce and community, sort of the two elements coming together, which has always been part of this, our value system when we talk about the symbiotic relationship that has to exist between commerce and community. That's sort of exemplified through the new logo.
Right.
At the same time that that we wanted to undertake this branding initiative, we were also looking at how the product is positioned in the market. Traditionally, it's been very focused on technical users, on software developers and designers, and what we were looking to do is attract more business users as well. And so, we've been trying to work towards releasing some additional applications that are more turnkey, more solutions-based applications, and we felt that those applications would be best presented to the market under a new brand name, and that is the Evoke brand name. And so these are still under the overall umbrella of DNN. DNN is still at the foundation of everything we do. And then we have the DNN platform, which was formerly called the Community Edition, which is the free open source offering, which is a very capable platform offering that you can use to build websites. You can use it to build community sites as well. But once you get into the more focused commercial solutions, that's where we've used the Evoke brand name as an umbrella for Evoke Social and Evoke Content. And those brand names are more intended to be more full-featured business solutions.
I see. So you're aiming at enterprise-level organizations with the new Evoke offerings, would you say?
Yes, that's right.
Right. So does that mean you're gonna have to maintain two different communities now, the open source community and the enterprise community?
No, I don't believe we do, because in fact, the solutions that we provide are built on the DNN platform. These are not completely separate applications with completely separate, functionality and separate code bases, separate teams working on them. They're all built on the same DNN platform, and so much of the functionality that someone might use as part of Evoke Content or Evoke Social is part of the DNN platform. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense for people to have to figure out, is this this specific feature that I'm relying on as part of the overall solution, is it part of the platform or is it part of Evoke? That doesn't make sense. Like, in their own mind, they're not going to come to that solution, and they're not going to understand that they would have to go to two different places to talk about those things. So it makes sense that all of those things should still be represented as part of the same community. People should feel free to ask whatever questions within the same channels and expect answers.
Gotcha. Okay, now what role does social play, or is social playing in DNN's evolution?
Social plays a significant role. It was a couple years ago that we felt that more and more of our user base and customers were trying to build community websites. So rather than just brochure type of websites with a lot of marketing content, they wanted to have engagement on those sites. They wanted to have people come to those sites and be able to contribute their own content and contribute feedback and get responses back. And so we felt that having that functionality as part of the platform was important. It was at that time that we acquired Active Modules, which was a leading provider of social functionality from our ecosystem. We incorporated the bulk of that functionality into the platform itself, so that there is a rich set of social functionality in the platform. And then later we worked on improving that functionality and adding additional capabilities, and that is all exemplified through the Evoke Social offering, which is one of our premier business solutions. So Evoke Social and Evoke Content.
Right.
And those solutions can be used in conjunction with one another or independently, depending on what the business needs.
Right. And from what I've seen, social's come a long way in the .NET platform. It's really given it a good level of, kick in the pants to get modern. So.
Yeah, certainly social. When we were looking at the market in general a couple of years ago and looking at other content management systems, many of those folks were sort of going down the path of marketing automation and how they could incorporate those types of capabilities into the CMS. And rather than be like everyone else, we were looking for a way to differentiate ourselves and go deeper in a specific area that other people were probably underserving. And we felt that social was that area. Yeah. And so we decided to go down that path instead, and that's been a good differentiator for us in the years since.
Right. I think everybody agrees. So listen, let's move the conversation over towards community a little bit. So Based on a lot of conversations I've had, there's been a sense that DNN Corp isn't as focused on the community as it was prior to the rebranding efforts. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think that when you go through such a substantial change as what we did with our rebranding exercise, it brings up a lot of questions about commitment, which is, some of those questions are happening in the public channels now, in terms of, is DNN Corp putting as much emphasis on the community as it is on its commercial offerings?
Right.
And I think it's a difficult thing for people to understand, in that, initially when we came out with the rebranding, we wanted to exemplify the new brand. And so we focused on, all of the new branding. We also focused pretty heavily on Evoke, because that's a brand new brand that we wanted to get out to the market so that people were aware of what it was and what it represented. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean we were taking our eyes off of the community. And especially on the new website, which was a complete transformation from where we were before. Absolutely. There was a lot of effort that was put into trying to come up with areas in that website that were very community focused. Because there was, and the funny thing is, people probably very quickly forget what the old site had to offer in terms of community, but it really wasn't a great community site. And so we were looking to make improvements on that in the new site. Mm-hmm. So having a dedicated platform area on the new site, like in the top level navigation, with a whole lot of rich content underneath that was all focused on the DNN platform, which is, the open source offering. We felt that was really important. Having a top level navigation for community and having, a rich set of services underneath that was important as well. And so, if you look at the site in general, I still believe we have a very balanced amount of content and functionality that cater to the two different aspects, both community and commerce. The only place where I feel that we haven't done that so far is on the homepage. The homepage is very focused on commercial, because right. That's what, the marketing aspects of that were to get our brand out. But you're going to see changes coming in the next couple of weeks, where we'll have a more balanced view even on the homepage, and we'll have some focus on the DNN platform.
Well, that sounds great. From your perspective, what's important to the DNN ecosystem, and how is DNN Corp going to revitalize the community?
Well, fundamentally, the DNN platform is the most important asset that exists in this ecosystem. And the fact that DNN Corp is the steward of that asset means that it's critically important that we put a lot of effort into making sure that it is a top-notch solution. Everything, like the whole model that we follow, is that we expect that tens of thousands of people use the DNN platform on a monthly basis. And there's only going to be a small percentage of those folks that convert and decide to use the commercial solutions. And so ensuring that the DNN platform is a highly competitive, relevant product offering is the only way that DNN Corp can be successful. And so for us to stop investing in it and stop focusing on it means that we would basically be killing off our business opportunity. So it makes no sense. Because right. That is the basic business model that we're following, and I don't think that everyone understands that. And so when people say that we're neglecting the platform or neglecting the community, in essence they're saying that we're killing off our own business, which would be suicidal. Right. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So yeah, from the DNN Corp's perspective, we are so internally, some of the things that we've done recently is we have actually separated the DNN platform team into its own team, which is focused solely on improving the platform. Mm-hmm. We have moved a set of resources, so some of our really top-notch developers, QA people, are focused on that. We've been working more closely with the community to identify those types of feature enhancements that the community finds relevant and important, trying to incorporate those into our upcoming releases. The next release that'll be coming out later this fall, in the sort of the November timeframe, has a lot of key functionality that was specifically requested by the community, things that were suggested through the community voice on our website and were voted on, and those are the types of enhancements that we want to incorporate into the platform, because getting that feedback from a lot of different members of the community is extremely important for building the right product.
Right. I think that's a great, keeping the community first in mind, along with building the business is a win-win for everybody, right?
Right, and it always has been, and that's been sort of a fundamental of the DNN ecosystem. Is we are constantly paying attention to what people are talking about, the types of things that people are facing in their website initiatives, and we want to make the product as productive as possible for them to utilize. Right. So we incorporating those features.
Right, and you guys have done a great job so far. I'm sure you'll continue to do that. In the past few years, you've had some, DNN Corp has put on some great conferences, DNN World, but there is no DNN World this year. So why is that?
Yeah, so unfortunately, you're right. There is no DNN World this year. Typically, we would have conferences in like fourth quarter, so usually around October, November timeframe. We had a conference last year at DNN World. It was in Orlando, and that was the second DNN World that we had hosted. It was a successful conference. I always enjoy the time that I got to spend at those conferences because I get to meet with a variety of people from within the ecosystem. Both users of the product as well as customers come to those conferences. Unfortunately, this year, due to a lot of different factors, partially because we were going through this rebranding exercise and that consumed a lot of effort and resources. We were coming out with the new product offerings under the Evoke brand name. That was consuming a lot of time and effort as well. And it just didn't seem like it was the right time for us to have a conference this fall. And so we decided that we would defer that until potentially next year, when we could perhaps have all of our bases covered and have everything in order so that we could have a really superior conference like we've had in the past. Because it seemed like we just didn't have the focus and in terms of resources this year to create the type of experience that the last two DNN Worlds have had.
Right, and that makes perfect sense to wait until you can do it right.
Yeah. That being said, I mean, the nice thing about the DNN community is that other folks have the opportunity to step up all the time, and so there is a conference this fall in mid-October, DNN Con in Florida again, in West Palm, hosted by Arrow, and that should be a great event. I mean, so people who are looking for the opportunity to interact and engage with members of the community should definitely consider going to DNN Con. It'll have a lot of great content there. I'll be attending. I'll be doing the keynote. And we can try to emulate the best characteristics of DNN World that we can.
Right. Now, I'll certainly be there this year since it's only like 40 minutes from my house, so easy for me to get there.
Lucky for you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about the framework. In what areas, first of all, how is DNN stacked up against other CMSs?
So I think that every CMS has its own unique characteristics. Sometimes it's based on technology. Clearly, there's a differentiator there in the fact that we are based on .NET currently. There's a lot of other content management systems that are based on PHP or Python or other technologies, and so that is often a determining factor for people when they're choosing a CMS, as they would look at which platform they feel most comfortable with. And so beyond that, in terms of getting into the functionality, pretty much every CMS today allows you to manage content in a fairly simple manner. They have different user experience sort of characteristics to them. Some people find the model that DNN follows to be very intuitive, the fact that you create pages and then you have the ability to put various different blocks of content on the pages in terms of modules. They find that very intuitive, as opposed to other content management systems where you don't necessarily create pages, but you create articles, and then you have to try to surface those articles in a variety of different ways. So it really comes down to, I guess, personal preference. If I look at some of the most popular so-called CMSs today. For example, WordPress is extremely popular. WordPress started off as a blogging platform, very strong in terms of creating blogs. Later, it's sort of been adapted to include other types of content and other types of apps that can be surfaced through it. I don't particularly find it extremely intuitive, but that's because, I guess, of the background that I came from. And then, other CMSs, Joomla has a lot of characteristics that very strongly emulate DNN, I think, in terms of conceptually how it operates. Drupal is also another popular CMS, and it's completely different in terms of how it deals with managing content. And people would have to figure out its own specific nuances for them to use it. But I think, the strengths of DNN are all around a really intuitive user interface, the ability to install custom applications, what we call modules, into the application so that you can get custom functionality spun up pretty easily, even if you're a non-technical user. You don't have to necessarily be a developer to install a custom module in DNN. We make it very simple, and we always have, so that you can get extra functionality. And then the skinning model, so the ability to transform the application's look and feel to match your own specific brand identity has always been an important aspect as well.
Yeah, all those things are, the things that really attracted me to .NET Nuke early on, and when you mentioned WordPress, I couldn't agree more. There's so many great things about .NET Nuke that I like, and one is that when you're working and editing on your pages, you're working on your live pages. You don't have to go to a separate admin area and then click a preview button to come back out and see your pages. That's what I really, it's a real good plus about .NET Nuke, among so many other things, so including the skinning engine for sure. So.
Yeah, I think that you're right. We've sort of always sort of had this, what we call in-context content management capability, which is exactly what you're talking about. When you're on a page and you're viewing the page and you go into edit mode, you're still on that page. You're not forced to go out to some completely separate website to administrate the content and then sort of swap back and forth between different browser instances to see how your changes are reflected on the site. That's something that people have found very intuitive, and it is a bit of a differentiator because a lot of the other CMSs do have a separate admin area, which I don't particularly feel is as intuitive. I think that there's other applications today that have this sort of in-context feel like DNN. Those are typically things like what we call site builders, like Squarespace and others, that Wix and Weebly, which have very limited functionality, and they're not necessarily extensible. They're more sort of cloud-based, simple website builders, but they have the same sort of in-context user experience that DNN has. Right. And people find it very intuitive.
Right. We can do so much more with .NET Nuke, which is great, or DNN, which is great. So, there's a lot of great areas of .NET Nuke and a lot of stuff that it does really, really good. What do you think are the areas where it's lacking?
Well, I guess as the sort of web landscape continues to evolve, there's constantly new areas that come up that are areas of improvement, and you can't always sort of look into the future and then even anticipate what those are. Like for example, when social started becoming a really sort of popular feature, and then almost started becoming commoditized in a way because every site needed it. We knew that was something we needed to incorporate. Mobile is another area which most businesses today need to have a great mobile experience. We've built some functionality around mobile into the platform. For example, you can spin up a separate mobile website pretty easily using our multi-site capability. We have a mobile template. You can use responsive design in DNN. There's nothing really stopping you. You can, there's a lot of great skins that people are creating today, commercially or otherwise, that you can utilize in DNN that gives you the responsive design capability. But I think that there is more improvements that we can make in the mobile area, specifically in the platform, to make it more robust.
Right.
We're always focused on performance. I think the one area where we've also sort of had a really strong offering from day one is around the access control model, so the security model. We give a lot of robust sort of permissions capabilities in the system, where you can lock down access to specific entities within your site. and we're constantly looking at ways of improving that as well and making it more intuitive. But that's generally been a strength of the platform over time.
Right.
User experience has been always on the list, and I guess as you've seen the evolution, right, from DNN 4, 5, 6, 7.
That's clearly improved. Yeah.
It's improved over time, but I mean, that's an area that sort of goes without saying. It requires constant attention,
right.
Because people's expectations of a good user experience is constantly changing and getting more sophisticated, and so we're trying to always keep up with that.
Right, exactly. There's always been one area that everybody's always asking me about, and where DNN has kind of lacked. That's been e-commerce. So, and I know there's more e-commerce modules out there, and when clients come to us and say, well, what e-commerce module should I use? There's really no clear answer. You know what I mean? Because it's not like we've used all these different e-commerce sets of modules and have worked through them 100% to know what's good and what's bad out there. But I think that's really one area, e-commerce, that's kind of been dragging, I would think.
Yeah, I think I would tend to agree with you. I mean, in the core platform, e-commerce isn't an area that we focused on. There's very, very limited sort of e-commerce capability there. We've always relied on the third-party ecosystem to come up with e-commerce solutions. We have an e-commerce solution that we provide as part of the Evoke content commercial product, and then there's a whole lot, probably 6 or 7 different e-commerce products that you can purchase commercially that are add-ons. Each of them have a different set of capabilities. Some of them are a lot more sophisticated, and in some ways maybe a little bit more complicated to use. Some of them are very simplistic. It does make it a bit challenging, I guess, to try and figure out which would be the appropriate product for your specific website's needs.
Right, right. So going forward, e-commerce will always be relying on third-party contributors there or developers for packages?
Well, yeah, there's nothing on the immediate roadmap in terms of tackling e-commerce as part of the core platform.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So going back to WordPress for just a minute, why would you tell someone to use DNN over WordPress or other CMSs out there? I say WordPress because it's the most widely used one, let's face it. And it's before you answer that, it's funny that just 2 days ago I had a client call me and say, I've got a client that's upgrading from WordPress to .NET Nuke, so that made me feel pretty good. But why would you tell someone to use DNN over WordPress or other CMSs?
I think that DNN offers you a lot more extensibility. So if there's specific things that you run into as part of your business that you need to customize, I think that DNN offers a lot more opportunities to sort of plug in functionality to the platform itself, and allows you to achieve a lot more than you can in WordPress. And I think even the base functionality out of the box, we provide a much richer set of features than what you get out of the box with WordPress by default. Also, I think in terms of security, .NET Nuke or DNN has been a much more secure platform over the years. The PHP-based systems seem to suffer from a lot more security vulnerabilities for whatever reason. I'm not sure why, but that is something I'd be concerned about in terms of using some of the PHP-based alternatives, whereas security has always been sort of fundamentally important to us, and I think that we benefit as well by the fact that we're based on the .NET platform, which has a lot of strong built-in security mechanisms as well.
Right, right.
If you have a strong technology background in Microsoft tools and technologies, then that would be another reason why you might want to choose DNN over a PHP alternative. I think that those sort of round out the main ones.
Sure. So if you had to do anything all over again over the last 12 years or so, what would it be? Anything you do differently?
I think the one thing that I would do differently is I think that there was a trend that started to build maybe 2006, 2007 towards cloud-based solutions. Whereas more and more mid-market companies didn't want to invest in servers, didn't want to invest in IT staff, didn't want to invest in infrastructure, and so there was this movement to use more cloud-based solutions. And so the fact that for many years DNN was only offered as an on-premise product, that you would have to figure out how to install it on your own infrastructure, put us at a bit of a disadvantage. So if you look at the rise of some of the more popular CMSs today, like WordPress, Drupal, you'll see that they jumped on the cloud bandwagon a bit earlier, and came out with cloud-based offerings that were very low cost. For example, WordPress.com has had free WordPress sites for probably since 2006, and that type of a capability allowed those solutions to accelerate and their communities to grow exponentially. Because as there's more users utilizing that software, there's more opportunity then also for system integrators and vendors to build plugins, and everything just sort of grows around it. It's a snowball effect.
Right.
And so I think that the fact that we were a bit later to come out with a cloud offering didn't allow us to tap into that sort of industry momentum as early as others did.
Right.
So that's my one regret.
Gotcha. Well, if you only have one regret, that's not doing too bad. So listen, my final question, what's on the roadmap ahead? Is there anything you can talk about that we should be looking forward to soon?
There's a lot of things coming on the roadmap. So some of the areas we're focusing on are around the management of digital assets. So having richer capabilities around managing files as part of your website. We've always had very basic capabilities around that, but we wanted to increase that capability. And a lot of CMSs don't provide very good integrated digital asset management as part of their platform. So this isn't necessarily just document management, but this is just the upload of images and various creative aspects of your site needs to be managed in a very robust way, and so we're looking at that. We also want to improve the developer experience as well, and we'll be coming out with some new tools and capabilities that allow people to sort of come up to speed more easily on .NET Nuke, especially when they're just learning it for the first time. I think that over time, the architecture has become more sophisticated, and it's a little bit difficult for new developers to sort of get introduced to the platform and figure out how to take advantage of the various extensibility points. And so we want to make it easier for people when they're just getting started, so that they can get up to speed very quickly and understand the model, how it works, and then focus more of their effort on building more sophisticated solutions on top of the platform.
Mm-hmm.
So as part of the platform, that's some of the things that we're looking at. We're also looking at web analytics as being something that every business needs to manage, and every business needs to measure how effective their website is. Web analytics are extremely important. The analytics capability that are part of the core platform are pretty limited at this point. Of course, you can use Google Analytics, but if you want to actually have more access to your own data, Google Analytics doesn't really provide that, and so having a good on-site analytics capability is important. So we're going to be adding richer capabilities there.
So are you saying an analytics dashboard is in our future? Of some kind?
I would, yes, most likely, yeah. So part of that will be, obviously capturing all of the rich logging information about, visitors coming to your site, and then exposing that in a way that makes sense, so that you can, manage the effectiveness of your website. Those are the key things I think that come to mind. Obviously, there's continuous improvements that we want to make in the social functionality as well. I think that there's enhancements that we intend to do to groups to make them more robust. The friends and followers capability that's part of the platform today needs to be hooked into other areas of the platform, so that you can better take advantage of that and create more of that sort of rich Facebook-like experience within DNN. There's so many things that we can do, and ultimately I would encourage people that if there are specific areas that they think that we should be focusing, you should be going to the community voice area of our website and logging your enhancement suggestions, and then other people can actually see those, comment on them, provide clarifications, perhaps ask questions, and also vote them up or down. And then so based on those the feedback we get, we'll know which things are the most important to the community.
Right. That's. I guess that's a really good way to close this down. So, DNN has really been good to me, Shaun, and I certainly look forward to the future with DNN. And again, everybody, Shaun Walker, co-founder and CTO of DNN Corp or DNN Corp. Thanks, Shaun.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy.